Well, God bless you all on this Thursday afternoon. This is another clergy conversation, and I'm so excited for this clergy conversation because this one means so much to me. I'm privileged to be able to interview somebody who means the world to me, one of God's greatest pastors, greatest preachers. Just he's just a great person. I mean, he's the legend. And all of us
Oh
that
my
know him
goodness.
know how much we love him. So I am privileged today to interview Uncle Gary, Pastor Gary Brumfield, the proud pastor of the Rose Hill Missionary Baptist Church in Magnolia, Mississippi. So, Unc, thank you for coming on and introduce yourself to the people.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, nephew. Once again, it's a joy to be with you on today. It's good to see you and to connect on this level. And I think you was talking about an amazing pastor and all of that. I think you have the wrong preacher on today. This is me today. But I'm glad to be with you and thank you for this invite.
Yes, sir. So, just as we start, give us a little background. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, wonderful. Gary Brumfield, God called me into the ministry, I believe, around 2003. Thank God for that. And I think 2004, I began my first pastorate, developed a lot of great relationships. And I think that's the main focus is to remember pastoring is about relationships. Whether you're still pastoring the people or God has transitioned you to another assignment, it's about relationships. And so I began pastoring Mount Pisgah Missionary Baptist Church in Paris, Texas. My first assignment, have a great deal of relationships and people with just so much love that they've shown throughout the years, even until now. God called us to Corinth Baptist Church, which is in Fort Worth, Texas, of course, where I met you, and God blessed me to meet you. But once again, some more wonderful relationships that we've had. And now God has allowed me to serve here at Rose Hill. So it's been a phenomenal transition. It's been interesting, and without God's people, I wouldn't be who I am and where I am. And so thank God for
So
just
you said
wonderful.
you started preaching at 23. At 23? No,
No,
you
no,
said
no.
2003. My fault. You
2003.
you said
Yes.
2003, and then you got called to pastor 2004.
Yes, yes, yes,
What?
yes. It
How
was
was that
interesting.
experience? I know we kind of early, but I want to know how was that experience.
Oh man. Actually I accepted my calling and I was under my pastor, Pastor Bernard Tate, my father in the ministry, and we he and I discussed things and ended up joining St. John's in Grand Prairie under the leadership of Dr. Denny Davis. And I call him Doc, and of course he's my pastor. I have great respect for him. And church became vacant in that church, Mount Pisgah. And he said, well, send Brom each time of different. Reverend Hill, he was not able to make it for some strange reason. And uh, each time they would call for someone to preach, he would say, send Brom. And I had a conversation. I said, Doc, I thought I was one of your good sons in the ministry. I thought I was faithful. Man, I'm here every Sunday. We have multiple services. We're at No Kill Live. We're in South Lake. We're there in Grand Prairie. And I said, every time you send me away, he said, oh, no, son, this is not a demotion. This is a promotion. He said, you're seeing it wrong. I said, oh, I thought you was getting me out. He said, oh, no, son, I love you too much. And so I ended up pastoring and I went three times, I think, consecutively. And I spoke with the chairman at the time who was, he's a pastor now, Pastor George Fisher. And I said, man, have you all found your pastor yet? Because I need to transition back to Dallas, to my area. He said, "Oh man, we closed the pastor search committee down, and we're just waiting on you to say yes." And I'm like, "Ho,
Oh,
ho, ho!" He said, "We're not even accepting any more preachers, man. You're the only
wow,
preacher the people want to hear." And I'm like, "Poor people, Lord bless these
wow,
people." And so that's how I ended up pastoring the great people at Paris, Texas.
wow. That's amazing. Mount Pisgah in Paris is where my father in the ministry, Curtis W. Wallace,
But
um,
that's it.
yeah, started pastoring. Of course, that family is known in Paris because that's where they're originally from. But That's interesting that how you go from just starting preaching, now you become a pastor. So how was that transition for you from going to an associate, from going to working under a pastor to now you're becoming a pastor and you haven't even been in the ministry that long? How was that transition?
It was very interesting because I was trying to battle this idea of school, trying to continue my education. I had both pastors tell me that a burning should have a learning, something like that. So anyway, education piece was very imperative to my ministry. And so the transition was somewhat interesting because everything was on the fly. He was telling me, I was telling Doc, man, you wouldn't believe this. Have to perform a first funeral. He said, "Oh, good job." I said, "Doc, man, yeah, I am have to do." He said, "Oh man, we have to get you ordained." I said, "Ordained?" He said, "Yeah, man." He said, "You got to perform your marriage ceremony." He said, "You're baptizing." He said, "You need to be an ordained minister." And so we were doing things on the fly, and Doc was in and out of town, and he was making time for me, and I hats off to him because I know the demand of being a pastor now, and I know how everybody's pulling you in ministry, pulls you in multiple directions. And so it was an interesting transition. And I think one of the key things about the transition is I had some other key leaders that I depended on. One was the late Dr. Cedric Britt. He instilled a lot of great behaviors, if you will, in me about expectations of pastors and what we should aspire to be. Dr. Campbell was another great, Dr. Earl King, just to name a few. Those kind of pastors were instrumental and those relationships. And I had some peers, Reverend Kelly, Reverend Preston Dixon, Reverend Downs, and people like that. I tell people, preachers, you need people on three levels in your life. You need somebody that you are equal with, that you can just share ideals with one another. And you need some brother that's not where you are and you're reaching back to help him become a better pastor. But you need somebody better than you so that you won't get the big head and think you're all of that. Somebody pouring into you. And so I try to have a healthy balance of preachers in my life, somebody that's been there, that has experience and wisdom, and don't mind sharing it. That's another thing. I had a lot of great people in my life that didn't mind sharing information and helping me become a better pastor and things that work for them. Pastor R.L. Sanders pulled me to the side several times and just would give me lectures and would help me, with just little small stuff. Dr. Nehemiah Davis, just preachers like that would just pour into my life, and I'm eternally grateful.
And so you talked about that, and I think that's something that's very important that we have those mentors, we have those people who we can really lean on, who we can really go to really have those conversations because it is very important. So, what would you say from your experience? What would you tell young pastors and young preachers about having the right type of pastoral sages or influences within their lives as they're going through ministry?
Wonderful. That's a wonderful question, or wonderful observation. How would you look at that? I would look at it from the standpoint of we're trying to find ourselves. And I think Dr. Hughes, my mentor, my pops in the ministry, hats off. He retired and called me in while the ministry was at the apex of. He was at the apex of his ministry. Everything was thriving. He stepped down while everything was well, when he didn't kill everything. And he made a statement to me and told me, "Don't get beside yourself because while the sun was rising on you, it was going down on me." He said, and the
Mm.
sun is going to go down on you, and it's going to be rising on somebody else. And he said, never get jealous of the pulpit and never think the ministry is all about you. Always know that God used preachers because he care about his people. He say the goal is his people, not the preacher. And so when I'm a younger preacher, younger pastor, I think that relationship has to be there where a young preacher feels comfortable to be himself. And you don't have to acquiesce to my way of doing things, and you can be uniquely yourself. And I can help you, although I might not like your swag, I might not like the way you do things because I'm old school. That's fine. If the ministry, if the church did not evolve, the church would not make it. And so we need young preachers who can speak to their generation. And he said something else. When young preachers can do it better than you, he said, egg them on, because the best preacher is always the one that's up preaching. And so I think young preachers, number one, we can't forget that. I guess I'm that middle age now. I'm not pops and I'm not the young school, so I'm Unc. A lot of the other preachers either call me Big Brother or something like that. So I'm of that middle age where I understand both worlds. I understand the importance of the struggle that they went through so that we might enjoy the privileges that we do today. But I also understand the new preachers and how charismatic and how just they think outside of the box, which you all are great. And I want to share this with the young preachers. It's okay to have great role models and people, your sages, as you mentioned, that you emulate, but be you. Don't try to be an old preacher when God has called you to be a young version of yourself. That everybody, I don't mind riding in a old school, old classic, but I like the new cars off the lot too, because they come with so much more. They have so much more amenities. They have so much more to offer. And I think that about our young preachers. You all have such a bright mind. You have such a way of dealing with technology in a technological world. You here we are today interviewing. You're in one part of the world. I'm in another part of the world, but we still maintaining relationships. And so you all have something that we don't have. And I believe we have something that you don't have. And you have youth. You have the energy. You have the wherewithal to do it. We have the wisdom to tell you how to pastor because we've been dealing with people for a long time. And so I think you need both. You need both to not only get what seminary has to offer, but you need the experience that the preachers have gone through so that uh, you would know how to, how to be the best pastor and the best version of yourself. And I think that's where we are.
Yes, sir. So, talk to us then just about your, because Unc is a husband and a father. So, talk to us about, just the family aspect as well. Having a
Wonderful,
family
wonderful.
while pastoring, the importance of those spending time with the family. Even though you're pastoring here, but making sure you are definitely spending time with the family.
Wow, good. Pastoring and family. That's a great one. I always look at the model of the Bible. Before God created a church, before there was a fellowship, or assembly of believers, whatever you want to call it, that was this idea of God developed an Adam and an Eve, and God blessed Adam with responsibilities. And his first responsibility was his relationship to God. And I think as men, as pastors, God called us to be priest, provider, and protector of our homes. And so, with that aspect of family, my family is my first ministry, not my second ministry. The church is my ministry. My family is my first ministry. If something happens at the church where, God forbid, I'm no longer pastor, I'm still going to have my mom. I'm still going to have my sisters, my brothers. So I'm not going to sever those relationships. I'm going to have my wife. I'm going to have my children, my grandchildren. So that relationship with my family is most important because they know the struggle, they know the fight. And, I don't care who you are. When you've been in the ring fighting, you need somebody in your corner just to throw water on you, throw the towel on your face and say, keep fighting. It's going to be okay. And so family is so important to me. And I invest in my family. And I think another thing about family, I'm the pastor. I don't call, my wife is not called to be the pastor. My children are not called to be the pastor. I'm called to be the pastor, which means I have to pastor them as well. And so I give them the same liberty as others give their children. Well, you're a preacher's kid. Yeah, they're a human being. Yeah. So I wasn't born a preacher. I was called a preacher. I wasn't that holy. My mama didn't name me Pastor Brumfield. She named me Gary Brumfield, which means I have regular children. I have regular grandchildren, and I'm going to love them the same way that everybody love their children. I have a regular wife that we have disagreements like everybody else, but we're human. So I do not paint this facade or this picture that I'm above struggles, I'm above disagreements, but we have this love that Christ has given us that calls us to forgive one another, love one another, and to try to be the best version of ourselves.
Yes, sir. And then also, before we get to, before we talk more about pastoring, just talk to us about the importance of school and education.
I want to say it was Dr. Michael Jalla. I can't remember who it was. He repeated a phrase that he had heard. He said, if you think education is expensive, try the high cost of ignorance.
Mm,
And so when I heard that, I'm forever in school. I'm forever learning. I'm never where I want to be. I think I'm 4 classes away from a master's. I'm attending Anderson right now, and they're challenging
me
me
too.
now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that's where I am, and I'm enjoying it. I've been through different schools, different seminaries, but my pastor's always told me, don't let the seminary become the cemetery. In other words, don't become so staged that you are you data dump. You just go get what everybody else say, and you just say, "Well, so and so said." Well, so and so said, and it's never a life experience. It's never about the experience of God in your life and what Christ has done for you. And you're so busy and so excited sharing everybody else's story that you forget God has given you a story. God has given you a testimony. But school has helped me put it in the proper perspective that the story is not about me. The story is leading up to Christ and what he's done and how he develops us into his disciples and how he's returning again and he's going to receive us unto himself. And so I think that's the picture now about the story. But I think seminary is important, schooling is important because you need to know. You need to know that your apologetics. You need to know how to defend the faith. You need to know what you stand on and what you believe. And you need to be certain, as Luke was writing to his gospel and the book of Acts. He was writing with certainty. He said, "I write with certain that you might be certain that this Jesus is real." And so we ought to be certain about what we know about Jesus, and we ought to be certain about what we know about the Holy Spirit and who He is in our lives and how He empowers us. And so I think it's very, very, very necessary that preachers receive more learning and do so that they can be complete. I tell people all the time, when I go to the doctor, I look for some credentials on his wall because I want to know he's made a certain sacrifice to invest in what he believes he's been called to do. And if I believe that about a doctor who works on my body, what do I believe about my pastor who gives watch over my soul? You
mm.
know, so school is that important to me.
Right. And I think, and I also believe it's important because, especially in this day and time, because we have there's so much out there, and we have so many nationalist groups, we have so many people trying to attack the Christian church, attack Christian preachers, attack Christianity. So I definitely think it's important for us to go to school, and in congregations all across the United States, you have very intelligent people that if you say something wrong, they'll call you out, and they know the Bible too.
Yeah, we can
You know,
read now. We can
right?
read now.
And so
So
it's not
that's
just the
good.
time where it's like we can just tell the story and that would be through. That day's over
Right.
because we have to really, as you say, we have to really know what we are talking about. So then also talk to us about the importance of the pastor, the preacher's devotional life.
Oh, wonderful. I believe that what's in you is going to come out of you under pressure.
Yes, sir.
That's just my philosophy. And I believe that a good cook samples his own meal, a chef samples their own meal before they serve it to anybody else. And so if the Bible is to work on them, it must first work on me. And if I'm teaching them to spend time with God, if I'm teaching them, the people of God, to have a devotional life, to have a journal, to write your prayers down, to uh, as they say, write the word of God in your heart, bind it about your neck. Then I have to do the same thing. I have to be that serious and have this early will I seek thee attitude or mindset. So I think it's difficult to tell people how to grow when you're not willing to grow yourself in a personal perspective with God in your relationship. So devotion, my devotional time, my quiet time helps me with those moments when pastoring gets difficult, when being a husband gets difficult, becomes when becoming a dad and my children looking like me when I was at the age. I need my devotional time. I need that strength. And so I tell people the word is so important and our power is in the word through the Holy Spirit. And that prayer life, if you little prayer, little power, it sounds a little elementary, but it's the truth. If you don't have an effectual, fervent prayer life, no, you it's going to be difficult in these times.
Yes, sir. And so now let's get back to Mount Pisgah because how long did you serve at Mount Pisgah?
I think it was about 5 years, 5 to 6 years
So how
I
were
was
your
there.
how was that pastoral experience?
Humbling. I think it was very it was a learning curve. I when I was called to pastor, I thought God was calling me to work on them. And it took one of my mentors to say, no, God is working on you. God is working on you. You're busy trying to work on somebody else, but it's you that God want, to humble down. It's you that God want to grow and develop. It's you that the words on the page must become a part of your life. And so when I looked at it from that perspective, it helped me to understand that what I see in others, that little speck, I had a plank hanging out of my eye. So
Wow.
and so that was good for me. But it was good. I learned a lot about administration and I learned how important it was to have some leadership classes. I learned how important it was to be business savvy because the church is an organism, but it's also an organization. And if you don't have some type of business model, some tiers in the church, some leadership where you understand whether who goes to where when you have questions. If you don't have a great secretary, I think that was in each one of my pastors. God has blessed me with Sister Marianne Fisher was a great secretary. She's gone on to be with the Lord. At Mount Pisgah, but she would say the things I would want to say, and she would tell you back off my pastor. We have a great pastor, and she would help me look good when I would forget things, when things are out of place. She would help me organize things. So, a great secretary is what a pastor needs. A great chairman is what a pastor needs. You need a chairman on your side, cheerleading for you, and speaking up on your behalf. You also need a great musician, and a great trustee. I think if a pastor have those five elements, he can build a strong ministry when those people are in his corner. And so I learned that right off because I had some people in my corner that would stand up, that would fight for me. Some great members who were not leaders. And so I think you need people in your corner.
And I
Hmm.
think that's as well. I think it's so important as you say to have people in your corner
Can
as
I
a
say
pastor
this?
because you said
Can I
what?
say this? Can I
Yeah,
say
go ahead, go
this?
ahead.
My At Mount Pisgah, I had a lot of vision. I had a lot of things, several great ideas that God had given me. And I'd written it down about leadership classes, about developing leaders. I had some great literature about teachers and teachers becoming better teachers, implementing, teachers training. I had several great ideas. I had the organizational chart about the order of the polity of the church, the structure of the church, the government of the church. I had several things written down. Do you know that I had that written down, and it's not until a few years ago that God has allowed me to implement it in my ministry? And so all I tell you is, despise not small beginnings.
Yes,
Don't
sir.
don't give up on your vision and what God has given you, because it might not come to pass a year later. But write the vision, make it plain. I know that's not in this context, but I still choose to use that right now.
No, it
Write that
works.
vision and I'll make it plain. Yeah, God will
Right.
make it come. God honors a plan. God honors a plan.
No,
And
that
so,
works. That works. But as you are going through that experience at Mount Pisgah, you talking about, like I say, it's important to have those people in your corner. But also, because I think sometimes when we, you know, are at a church because of what we've seen from maybe our home church or a
mhm,
church that we've admired, sometimes we may try to bring that to the spot we get called to, and then it kind of may be a little frustrating, or it even may be a little irritating because it's not working the way we want. But then it's like you have to see to where it's like every church is different. What
okay.
fits this church may not necessarily fit this church. So how do you, especially with you coming from Dr. Bernard Tay at Heavenly Vision, then coming from St. John and Grand Prairie with Denny Davis, but now you're going and you're leaving really the metroplex of DFW,
Hmm.
and now you're
Yeah.
going to Paris, Texas. So just talk about even that the differences in culture.
Wonderful. God never wastes an opportunity. I had a great saint tell me that. The every I think part of my challenge, I had some self-inflicted wounds because I was trying to somebody told me you drive cows, but you lead sheep.
Mm,
You drive cows, but you lead sheep. I was trying to drive them to a mindset that I had. And I never took a moment to slow down and say, now, what's your culture here? How do you do things? And let me just observe. And it took like until my third year to just take my hands off and just look at how they function, look at how they roll. And if I would have done that first year, I would have learned the relationships there. I would have learned that, you know, oak trees are big, but the roots go deep.
mm,
And so when you call yourself moving this person, moving this deacon, or moving this, calling this position, whatever, you have to understand that, yeah, you won that moment, but you got the rest of your life to be with them. And so you
wow.
got that battle because, believe it or not, blood is thicker than water. And so you got some relationships that you have to develop, and you have to wait on God. There's this passage where God tells Moses, I'm going to give you some people with your spirit, and you have to wait on people with your spirit to show up. And you know them, you can recognize them, because when you put something out there, they're going to say, Pastor, say it. And they're going to say, let's get it. And they're going to help be that cheerleader that you need. I think that a pastor should take the first 3 to 5 years and just settle down and just learn your people, build relationships. Where do you work? What does your children do? Oh, let me catch that ball game. You got what? Okay, well, let me see what's going on. I never seen crochet, but I want to see it now. And so that kind of stuff is important. I had a young lady in Paris, and she didn't come to church because she was sick and all of this. And uh, uh, Minister George Fisher, he was minister at the time. He had become preacher. He was pastoring, and he said, "Pastor, I got somebody I think you ought to see." She said hadn't been to church in a long time, and she grows these trees. And she said, "I need you to go and see these trees." I said, "Man, I don't care about no trees," and I'm saying to myself. And so he said, "Go and see these trees." And he said she do a little baking, and she hadn't been able to get to church and all of this. And I said, okay, well, take me by there. And that's another thing with young preachers. When you don't know people, get people that know people so that you can be seen with them, so that you can be seen building those relationships. You need
Hmm.
somebody speaking for you. Everything is about relationship. I went by that house and she mean mugged me. Hey, and I'm like, hey, how you doing? I'm good. By the time you got by here and saw me, I hadn't been to church since you've been there. I said, yes, ma'am. I didn't even know you was a member. I'm saying to myself, and somebody should have told you I was sick and I'd been at home. And I said, yes, ma'am. I said, Mama, I just dropped that ball on that one. I said, what's that tree in your yard? She said, you saw my tree driving up. Whole conversation changed. I said, I saw that tree. What's going on with these trees? Mama got her cane, got up, walked outside, limped outside, could barely stand. She said, now this my baby. She started naming her trees outside. And she said, well, come on back in. My pastor's here now. Now I've gone from somebody that should have been there to I'm pastor now. Now, Pastor, I did a little baking. And I said, you better not have no pound cake in here. She said, I don't know how you know I bake. And she had a pound cake, cut me a slice, and tell me how it tastes. And I got me a little piece on the spot. I said, you better not have no bluebell. She said, I don't have it, but here's some money. You stop by the store and get you some bluebell. Ever since that Sunday, Mama started sending me a love offering and a tithe in every Sunday.
Wow.
You hear me? And so
Yes, sir.
relationships are important. She couldn't make it to church. She was sick. She had a legitimate reason, and she felt that nobody cared. All we cared about was the program moving on. And I forgot for a moment that the program was about the people.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And so that's where I was, and that's what I would share.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So you're there for 6 years. Right,
Yeah.
6 years.
6 years.
6 years. So then, how do you go? How did Corinth come about?
Well, I was trying to, I think I ran into a wall. I ran into a wall where I was trying to move the people and I was trying to move them too fast. And I think I had driven them too fast rather than leading them. And about that fifth year, I stopped doing it, just started loving the people, just uh, started preaching where we were going. I stopped preaching where we were. I stopped preaching our situation and I started preaching your potential. Start preaching what it looks like with Christ on your side and with Christ in your life. I started preaching that potential that we all had to be our best versions of ourselves. And I really stopped worrying about everything because I was ready. I'm like, Lord, I'm ready to get out of here. I packed up one Sunday and I was ready to go. And my mentor called me and said, what are you doing? And I looked around like, I got cameras in my office. What do you mean? He said, did God tell you to go? Or are you just doing it? I said, wait, what's going on? What are you talking about? He said, the Lord said you was packing up leaving.
Hmm.
I say, I am. I have my whole office packed up. He say, who called you? You or God? I say, God called me. He say, unpack that stuff, go down and preach like it's your last Sunday. Those are God's people. God called you. You didn't call yourself. I unpacked my stuff, came down and preached. And this woman shouted the entire service. That Sunday, Corinth had sent somebody in because they didn't want to take me away from my service. I didn't know it. Corinth sent somebody and said, go and scout him out at his own place. That Sunday, that Sunday was somebody that I wanted to quit, was the Sunday that God was saying, it's time for me to elevate you.
Wow.
And so all I say is God, Father knows best. Yeah,
Wow. Wow. I'm wait.
yeah.
I'm wow. The same Sunday you said I'm through is the same Sunday it was Elevation Sunday. You didn't even know it.
Exact same Sunday. The exact same Sunday. And so I
That's
didn't even know it. I didn't know they were there. And I kept preaching. I preached a Sunday a sermon called Shift. It was Shift. And I forget the gist of it in the text, but there are times when you're better than your past, you're bigger than your presence, and you're ready for more. And I
mm,
preach shift. And you got to start living, looking, and acting like you're walking on your in your next level of blessings. And I can't forget the sermon, but I remember it was shift. And that Sunday, I really shifted. I shifted where I was no more complaining. There was no more wanting to leave. That was God, do whatever you got to do with me and for these people that you sent me here to be a blessing to. And when I started thinking like that, man, those people started loving on us so hard. They started, because the saints of God can sense when you're not all there. I wasn't all there. But when I was all there, those people started loving on us. There were times when I'd miss some checks. We wasn't able. Our budget wasn't able to give the pastor an offering, anything compensate the pastor. And I was driving 2 hours one way, and the people wanted me to come down twice a week. So that's now 4 hours. So I literally raised my family on the road. Can you hear me? I literally raised my family on the road. We did homework going back and forth to Paris, and there was some Sundays that I wasn't able to get a dime. But after that, they started giving me double checks, saying, "Pastor, we love you." They just started doing little extra stuff. Just went out of the box, and it got so sweet, Doc. It got so sweet. I said, "Lord, am I dying and going to heaven?" And no, God said, "Now I got you right." Kind of like Abraham when he went up on the mount to sacrifice Isaac. God, the angel of God said, excuse me, stay your hand. God said, now I know I can trust you on another level of blessings. And that's kind of where I was with God. God, listen, whatever you want me to do, I'm yours. I'm through fighting you. I'm through going against the grain, kicking the pricks. Tell me what you want, God. And I preached shift. And that was for me. But the entire church, the body shifted. And it was, man, it became so smooth and so pleasant. I'm telling you, it was hidden. But that's what I would say. And we transitioned to Corinth after that.
Wow. How did the transition go from Mount Pisgah to Corinth? Because I'm pretty sure Mount Pisgah, they were sad to see you go. They didn't want you to go. So talk about
Yes,
that. Talk
yes.
about that to us, because there's also somebody maybe listening who is at that place where, as you said, they've hit the wall, and then they may be at that spot where it's now like they've since leaving, and now they're on the verge of leaving or about to leave, and it's like, well, how do I still handle this transition? How do I do this? How do I do that? How do help us
Good.
with that?
There's always this idea of do the best where you are, because he that is faithful over a few things, then God would make him ruler over much. So I would say be sure that you are faithful over what God has given you, and be sure you've completed your assignment. Everything God has put your hands to do there. If God has called you to pastor, that means he's called you to lead. And if he's called you to lead, you have to know where you're leading the people in order to know where you're obtaining your goal or not. And so I would say that. But the transition to from Mount Pisgah to Corinth was somewhat interesting. I was the front runner of two churches and another church and Corinth. I was front runners of both churches. And my pastor called and said, Brum, two churches are calling you. And if both churches are calling you, which one heard from God? I said, wow. I said, I don't know. So I went to praying. And the other church we went to, it was packed every time. It was charismatic. They were out of the box. I mean, it was jumping. It was standing room only. I'm serious. They had to tell people we can have nobody else in this church. And Corinth was a little more laid back, older. It was settled, established. And when I'm preaching, I'm trying to pull an amen out and all of this. And they over here shouting and jumping, saying, preach, God. And so I'm like, I'm sure I'm going over here where the shouting is, where the rejoicing is, where people are pumping me up. And I was in a meeting. They called me in a meeting with the deacons, and one of the deacons said, "Aren't you proud of us? How we can run this church without a pastor? How we doing good all by ourselves? We really don't need you. We'll bring you."
Mm,
I said, "Oh." And that hit me. Corinne called me and said, listen, we need a pastor that's going to lead us, that we can follow. When you say it, we're going to respond.
wow.
I said, wow. They said, we don't fight our pastor here. We're not a fighting church. We love our pastor here. And I was in a time where I needed healing. I was at a time where I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to be confrontational. I was in a place where I just needed to be mended back together. And Corinth did that for us because had a lot of ideas. And believe it or not, becomes disheartening when you have a lot of vision, but you can't hardly implement anything because the powers to be in the church. has it at a stronghold, if you will. And so Corinth was a very good transition. We built, continued to build. I think some of the people from Paris even actually started driving down to Fort Worth to worship with us. We had people from Dallas that drove over. And so it was a great transition. It was still about relationships. But Corinth was a great transition. They loved on us real, real hard. Uh, they wasn't a shouting church. They were a doing church. They were a doing church. They were a giving church, and they were a we support our pastor church. And so it was very good. It was very good. It was very good. It was very good. Very good transition, and like you say, still have some great relationships there. Matter of fact, when God called me to leave uh, Corinth, God my anniversary was in June. I announced it before, so it wouldn't be a secret that I was leaving. And they not only did a appreciation, but they did a farewell. And my farewell service was just as big as my appreciation. And
Mm.
Corinth made sure of that. We started online giving at Corinth, and they offered to say, Pastor, take whatever out of that online giving since we wasn't using it for your move. I said, no. Rose Hill said, we can't let you do that. We take care of our own pastor. But just that kind of love. I think it was like up until 2 or 3 years I was down here that they would buy. I'll tell them each February, love is in the air. And Corinth would buy a big Valentine's card, and everybody's part of the pastor's support would sign that card, and they would still send me love down here in Mississippi from
Wow.
Fort Worth. And so love was in the air. So I tell preachers, your time is coming. Never hate on somebody's glory because you don't know their story. You don't know the times I drove to Paris with my truck on E, and all I had was some coins to put in the offering. And my finance team laughed at me and said, Pastor B, you must be tripping. You somebody put your name on. I said, no, that was mine. That was all I had. And I promised God, if he blessed me, anytime I have $20 in my pocket, no matter what service I'm in, I say, God, I'm gonna sow a $20 seed. I don't care what service it is. God has been faithful to his word. And so that's what I say. God will bless you. God will keep you. But God gives lessons that keep us. Paul talks about that thorn. Lest lest I like to put it in Brumfield's version. Lest I get beside myself and get the big head. So God sends some thorns to keep us grounded.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. And Unc was kind to me because I need to apologize to him for this because he was kind to let me preach at Corinth. But looking back on it, that's probably one of the worst sermons ever. Uh, so I need to say thank you for letting the young preacher try, and that's exactly what that was. That was a failed attempt. So I need to apologize to immediately, just saying how bad of a sermon that really was. Looking back on it now, but it taught me a lesson as
Oh,
well. That even and this is just me, 'cause I talk to my pastor about this all the time as well. That sometimes when we preach a sermon at one church, doesn't necessarily and it has a good reaction there, may not necessarily mean it's going to have a good reaction at another church.
can I say this?
Mm-hmm.
Don't ever preach for reaction.
Yes, sir.
Don't ever preach for a response. Some of my best sermons, the people didn't say a word.
Yes, sir.
Uh, I was preaching this service about the widow's mite, and we was in our stewardship. And Corinth looked at me as if their eyes, if they were a sword, they would have cut me up and down. I'm like, well, I'm gonna preach it anyhow. Doc, they didn't say a word, just looked at me. And they were just listening intently, listening to every word. After that sermon, nobody responded. Nobody said anything. The entire sermon, the entire message. And I say, am I still preaching? Did you turn my mic off? And that Sunday, I think we had like 12 people give their life to Christ. The
Mm,
offering quadrupled that Sunday.
wow.
I stopped preaching for a reaction and I started preaching from substance.
Yes, sir.
You hear what I'm saying? And
Yes,
so
sir.
that taught me that lesson. And remember, the best preacher is always the one up preaching,
Yes, sir.
period. That's the best preacher. And so you were the best preacher because you were the one up preaching. Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
appreciate that. But because I think sometimes we can, sometimes we may be used to getting responses, and then when it doesn't happen, it may seem like, well, they wasn't really with me, or did I mess up, or it may seem like I know I prepared, but I just didn't get the response. But as you just said, you said something important. Don't preach for a reaction, because you don't realize how much your preaching is actually being effective, even though it may not necessarily be everybody standing up, shouting, waving their hands, clapping. But as you just said, with quadruple offering over stewardship, you don't realize who is really taking it all in.
Let me say this as well. Remember now, uh, God has promised that His word cannot go out and return void. It's
Yes,
just
sir.
like it cannot rain and something not get wet. It's
Yes, sir.
impossible. It's impossible. It's impossible for you to prepare that word, spend that time with God, hear from God, share with God's people, and challenge them in that sermon. It's always a challenge. There's this new thing, and I know you know it. There's this new thing called "so what."
Mm-hmm.
So what in your sermon? After you finish preaching, so what does that have to do with a sinner who's seeking for some answers? So what does that have to do with somebody who's walked away from God, wandered away from God, not in His will? So what does that have to do with me, that I'm lined up with God? I'm in church, I'm a giver, but I still have cancer. So what does that have to do with me? I love God before my family members has died from COVID-19, and I don't know what's going to happen with the other family members that's on the ventilator. And so unless you have a so what in your sermon, unless you can see that person in that seat be a human being, then you're not ready to preach to God's people.
Mm. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And so what's your so what? Who do you have that you're loving on? Who did you have? Do you have that's a great member, but that's having a tough time? What do you tell them about the word of God? How do you so what, Pastor? So what? You don't have to shout me with a so what. You just meet me right where I am.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? And then, so what? How am I to respond? What response are you looking for in this sermon? If I preach this Sunday, level up. When David's talking about, I believe I'm going to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. I would have fainted otherwise if I didn't believe it. Then David say, I'm going to level up above my haters. So what do I want the people to do? Well, the next time you come into some contact with some people that don't like you, that hate you because they can't be you, or hate you because they can't stop you, level up to a level that they can't reach. Well, how do you do that? Well, on your job. How do you do that among your peers? Well, give me a challenge. Give me a challenge. You see what I'm saying? Challenge me to be a better saint. I always tell people there are 5 areas of a good Christian, of a good believer. There's your fellowship, there's your worship, there's your ministry, there's your discipleship, and there's your evangelism. And so if your members have those 5 elements in their lives, they're going to at least have the foundation to be a strong member. You see what I'm saying? And so ask yourself, how do you develop that in your sermons? What's your goal for the members of your church? You serve a good Sunrise is a great church, but what do you want Sunrise members to be? Well, start implementing that. The wildebeest have one of the greatest survival rates because they do a great migration. They repeat a path throughout the year so that they would ensure the success of their offspring. What migration do you have so that your church is going to get worship? They're going to get a healthy dose of what worship is. They're going to get a healthy dose of what evangelism is. They're going to get a healthy dose of what fellowship is. They're going to get a healthy dose of what discipleship is. And they're going to get a healthy dose of whatever the other one is, ministry is. And so those 5 elements, I know if you have this, I know you're going to be a strong member. You're going to add to the body of Christ and not subtract from it. And so that's what I would tell you. Preach with substance, preach with purpose, and then look for God to give the increase. God, I'm looking for your people to become better givers in their worship. I'm looking for more humility in your people. I'm looking for them to be stronger in the faith through this building up of discipleship. I'm looking for them to serve better. I'm going to teach them how to do ministry inside and outside the church. And so, as pastor, that has to be your vision. You have to have that goal, and then you have to get with somebody. See, if you don't give people something to work on, they're going to continually work on you.
Mm-hmm.
I always remember that. And so that's where I was. That's where I am. And I had great people to pour into my life. And so, okay, I'm overdoing it, but go ahead.
No, no, no. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. You blessing us. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah, yeah. But that's the way I look at membership, look at transition. What are we becoming? What am I becoming? And to look at them, I have to look at those five elements in my life. And I have to constantly examine myself because once I get strong in one, the other ones are falling off. So there's a repeated path to not only grow me, but to grow them as well. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Yeah,
All right.
you helping me. You helping me a
Oh
lot. You
Lord, oh
definitely
Lord.
helping me. So you're at Corinth. How many years were you at Corinth?
I was at Corinth going on 6 years as well.
Okay.
Almost
Wow.
6 years.
Same thing. 6 years. So
Five, six
just
years.
talk to us just about the experience at
See.
Corinth and then the transition to Rose Hill.
Oh wow. Oh wow. I remember my goal was to buy up the entire blocks around Corinth. We wanted to own everything. We heard
Yeah.
that the Cowboy Stadium was coming to Fort Worth, coming to Arlington, which is Tarrant County. And we know that that was going to be a boom downtown. And so we wanted to buy up all of the vacancies around us. And we had all but one property. And I told my deacons, and we had the money, we had the resources. God had blessed us, and I told them, I said, "Listen, let's go and purchase this property." I said, "It's coming." I said, "The property. I think they're going to move out of that house, and I think that's the last piece, and we're going to build us a new sanctuary, and we want access on both sides." And oh, the people were excited. They were ecstatic. I was bringing the architect in to come in and look at our plans, and he told me some ideals, and we was about to put the ideals down, but we needed this one piece of property so that the vision could be complete. And I told the deacon that I said, now every piece of property come available over here in Riverside. It's on the market today. Tomorrow it's sold. I said, when it comes on the market that Monday, I said, I want that property purchased by us. And that Monday, it went on sale. And that Tuesday, it was gone just as we said. And the deacon, we all agreed that we needed to buy purchase that property to make the vision complete. And we missed that. When we missed that piece of property, my, there's a passage that talks about Saul's heart changed towards David. My heart changed toward Corinth when we missed that property. For one, I thought we missed the move of God. Number two, I felt like as pastor, each decision we've made has been a positive decision for the people of God. And this one time we drag our feet when I need you most. And I was crushed. I was crushed because I saw our vision go down the drain with this one act of disobedience. And so uh, after that, I was preaching. I wasn't there. It was difficult to drive up to the church. It was difficult. I had to come in one way so I wouldn't see that house that they bought from underneath us. It was rough. I hit a rough patch, and Rose Hill, Dr. Hughes called. We ended up meeting down here. I came home to visit our home church, and the Lord had already told me when I first started pastoring that my ministry was back home. Met my grandfather in a dream. I'm not a prophet or anything now, but my grandfather came to me in a dream and said, "Your work is back home." Long story short, never met my grandfather, never seen a picture of him, never met a grandfather on either side of my family, but I saw this man in my dreams. And it was until last year I finally saw a picture. I say, this is my granddaddy. They say, you don't know that. I say, yes, I do. This man showed up in my dream. She said, that's your granddaddy, but I don't know. We've never had a picture of him. I don't know how you know this. I said, he came to me in my dream. Well, I knew then it was God. It wasn't me. But anyway, I didn't know a pastor back home or anything. And Dr. Hughes and we had a rough patch because when I came home, he was like, he hated me from the jump. And I was like, well, I don't like you either, you old stubborn man. I say, so that's cool. You don't have to like me. I don't have to like you. And I'm not coming back. Well, long story short, he heard it was a pastor out of Texas called him and told him, all you Mississippi preachers don't know how to preach. I happened to come home from Texas. So I received the blunt of that blow because he thought I was this arrogant preacher who said all Mississippi preachers can't preach. And so we ended up getting past that, and we have this inside joke now. I don't like you, and you don't like me, and we cool with that. No, but he called me and he said, God has laid you on my heart, and you're the next pastor of Rose Hill. And when he said that, he said, I'm no longer making any decisions. He said, you pastor through me, and I'm going to only do what you tell me to do. And he allowed me to pastor the church through him, although I wasn't called to be the pastor. And he told the church, if you want my help, I'll choose the next pastor. Now, if you choose the next pastor, I'm fading off the scene, and you can't call me for help. He said, but if he's the next pastor, if I lay hands on him, I'll stay here, I'll mentor him, and we'll develop him together. And so that situation was real smooth. And sure enough, they called me in. Rosie asked me, what do you want your package to be? And so they let me implement my package, how I want things to be, and all of that, what type of compensation, what type of benefits. And so I was able to be a part of that because Dr. Hughes said, let him tell you what he wants. Don't tell him what you want. He knows his needs. He has a family. And so I was blessed in that aspect. And to have, it's crazy. This ministry is thriving. He left us in a good position. I think uh, our daily meals, we serve almost 3,000 hot plates a month for free. We provide transportation. We have Vision Christian Academy School. We have adult daycare, Compassionate Hearts, and now we have Rose Hill Transportation. And all of it are business. All of them are businesses that we started from ground up. And so I'm excited to be CEO and pastor. And CEO is not anything fancy to say because I told the employees I forego my salary in the businesses that we might hire good people, and you all spread my salary among the people. And so whatever you give to me, we end up giving it back to Dr. Hughes or putting it in the salary because everything is not for you. Every blessing is not for you. Doc always tell me God gets a blessing too, to whom he can get a blessing through. And so it's a phenomenal ministry. I was just looking, I have another thing coming up, and we was talking about scholarships. And I think over the past 5 years, I have some great deacons, some great brothers that don't tie my hands and they let me pastor. I think we've given away over 125,000 in scholarships over the past 5 years. We just started our Next Step ministry for young ladies who's dropped out of school, didn't complete their education for any reason. We set aside $30,000. You can just go and use that money until it's gone. No questions asked, no red tape. Just use the money and make yourself better. And we had 5 young ladies to graduate from that program, and they're doing good. Now we're about to implement our next step for young men. Uh, we did our first car giveaway, and this year I had somebody want to partner with us, and they want to try to give away 5 cars this year. And so thank God for those ministries. Thank God for people like Global Dynamics, that company that enable us to do great things. We've partnered with some schools now. We have a school in Jamaica. We have a school in Ghana, in Africa, and Rose Hill. But the people don't, I told them we are a church, we are a city church in the country.
Mm.
And so don't develop this country mindset that the focus or spotlight is on us, because if the spotlight is on you, it's too small for God. And so we always tell the people, it ain't about you, boo. And so God has blessed us to do something, and they love it. They love it. And I think for young pastors, learn who you are, be who you are, and enjoy being you. I think one thing that is, I'm country. I don't articulate well. I don't have great enunciation. Some of my words might be country and all of this, but I know what God has called me to do. I don't have to be somebody else. What I've learned is you can be who you are, enjoy who you are, and God can use you in a phenomenal way. And so that's what I tell people: find out who you are. People are human and people want to be loved. People want you to know that they exist. And when you do that, when you realize that, God will bless you in a great way. Rose
Man,
Hill is a great transition.
man, that's wow. That whole transition story is amazing. I got a couple questions on, and we're gonna be more questions than we'll be done. But this whole transition is just amazing. But you said something I think is very important: the importance of a pastoral package.
Okay.
Letting the church know what you need, and I think that's important as well. But also working through a transition, and how your predecessor was so generous in the way you say, "I'll pastor the people through you." To me, that's amazing.
Well, that's true leadership
Hmm.
because I'm running for state senate, and my predecessor said success is nothing uh, uh, without a successor. And so I think preachers that don't have the Joshua messed up. Moses put his hands on Joshua. Joshua didn't put his hands on anybody.
Mm.
Paul put his hands on Timothy. We don't hear Timothy put his hands on anybody. Elisha put his hands on Elisha, but we don't hear Elisha put his hands on anybody. And so what that says is sometimes preachers get consumed and leadership get consumed with this idea that we're going to be there forever. If you really care about the church, listen, in my retirement package, uh, in my insurance package, I have an insurance policy for my next pastor. When
Wow.
something happens to me, God called me on home. My next pastor does not start where I start. My next pastor start with a certain amount of money that after uh, at the first year he has access to everything that belonged to him. It's not something that we hold back. No, give it to him if it belonged to him. But when we as pastors start pastoring, even you need to stop pastoring for yourself and start doing things for the next pastor so you won't have to have the same struggle that you have. And then when you put things in place, put it in place so you don't have to revisit it. Whatever we're doing, we always, I don't have to go to the church and ask them for a raise. I have an annual raise. It's a 1% raise every year. I don't have to ask for it. Now, if they want to do something more or whatever, they can do that. But it's an automatic 1% raise, and the church know it. It's no argument. It's a cost of living. We know that cost of living is going to happen, and we see that now. But the people of God understands that, and there's a thing called love your pastor and keep him. Uh, Pastors love where they are, but sometimes we turn them off by showing them you're coming or we don't care. No, show your pastor he's a gift from God. Show your pastor that you love him. And so that's what I would say about that. Now we have to be careful when we call it full time, and it's not a full-time package. When you call it a full-time pastorate, you have to make sure that the compensation is amicable to the wording and the verbiage that you're using. So when you talk about a CEO or somebody like that, go and look at that package that they offer and then kind of use some of that language and kind of reflect some of that when you talk about a pastor full time. Does that? I hope that helps.
No, that I'll tell you, it's all helping. It's all helping tremendously. So, how has it been? And let me just say, from having seen pictures and videos, Rose Hill is a beautiful church. By the way, let me just say that right now.
And a
Rose Hill is
beautiful
a
people.
is a beautiful church. Right, beautiful people. So, how was it for you having to lead the church through COVID, even in the midst of COVID now, just like what were things that, in a sense, like you may have struggled with before, you may have kind of protested before that you had to implement now because of COVID?
Okay, wonderful. I didn't have struggles. Uh, I meet with my deacons every Sunday. and we have our leadership development. We go through scenarios. How you handle this? We don't just tell them handle this. You have to demonstrate that you can handle this level of responsibility, if you will. And so with that, their job, they always tell me, Pastor, we're not pastor fighters. That Moses, Joshua, that her and Aaron ideal when Moses was up on the mountain and his arms grew tired. And they say, Pastor, that's us. We're an extension of the pastor's arms. We reach what you cannot reach. We don't use our arms to fight you. Use our arms to fight with you. And so whatever you believe, that's what we believe. Whatever is important to you, that's important to you. So when COVID hit, we didn't have this turf battle. We didn't have this power struggle. I asked them, my chairman called me and say, Doc, what do we do from here? I said, what's your idea, bro, Chair? He said, you out has to tell us and we're going to do it. I say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to pull together a modified worship team. And in that modified worship team, we're going to have certain members that's going to be reflective of the church. My secretary, my chairman, one of my trustees, my musician. We're going to have a youth leader. We're going to have somebody in the medical field. We're going to have somebody with the young adults and somebody with our seniors and somebody teaching our empowerment hour, our Sunday school, as you call it. And so that's going to be our team and our sound team. And that's going to be our team. So with that, we call it our modified worship. And if you wasn't part of the modified worship, you couldn't come to the sanctuary. And with deacons, they rotated responsibilities, but everybody couldn't just show up to the house because we had to abide by the CDC guidelines. We wasn't being mean, but we didn't have that struggle because they say, Pastor, lead us. And I said, God, lead me, if that makes sense. And
Yes,
so
sir.
we've never been there. But so that was something that was very interesting because every pastor only had 10 members. Nobody was big. We didn't have mega pastors. So so it taught me how to try to preach with substance and how to challenge the people that so what, and then what do I want you to do after you leave this sermon. That helped me because I couldn't see the people. I couldn't hear amen. I couldn't see anybody waving
Right.
their hands. I couldn't, and it made me appreciate having somebody in the congregation. And
Yes,
so
sir.
that's what it did.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And then talk to us about your sermon preparation process, and also a follow up, the importance of reading and building a library.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, it's really uh, sermon prep for me. I always go back and look at the top 10 areas of my church or my congregation that is hurting or that's struggling. And I list those 10 things and I list them in the order that are most important. And from that, it's like going to the doctor. I was preaching sermons, but I went to the doctor and said, Doc, listen, man, I twisted my knee playing basketball. And my doctor said, let me look in your ear. And I said, Doc, nothing wrong with my ear. It's my knee that's messing up. He said, yeah, let me look at the other ear. I said, Doc, it's not my other ear. It's my knee. He said, well, let me look up your nose. Open your mouth. Say, I said, Doc, it's my knee. And that's how I was. I was preaching about everything but the main things that are happening in my church. And so I never was addressing those issues. And so my sermon prep comes from prayerful time with God, saying, God, what are some of our needs? What are we struggling with? What do you see your people need? What areas do I see we're not strengthening in? And whatever that is, I say that's why you called me to be pastor. So it's a good place to be pastor. And so whatever it is, it's a good place to be pastor. And so that's my sort of my sermon prep, building your library. I think if you read widely, you preach widely. But I also think you have to be careful in your reading that you don't become a bookworm and become somebody else, and you're not a true you're a carbon copy of somebody else and you're not really who you are. And so we're so busy trying to say what somebody else said, and somebody else is so profound that you fail to realize that you're profound as well. And so that's the warning I would have with that as well. Make sure that you know you're profound as well. So class does that for me. Whenever I'm in class, it makes me read. It makes me stay true to continuing to pour in. So that's just me. That's just Brom now. Okay.
Well, thank you. Well, is there anything else that's on your heart? Anything else you want to encourage us? Anything else you want to say before we close?
Yes, I would tell every preacher, every pastor, I'm cheering for you. It's a difficult time. It's a rough time. We're in a place we've never been. Why not be the pastor? Somebody's going to pastor the church. Why don't you pastor? Throw your arms around God's people and love them through, guide them through where they need to be. And also know, be a part of something that's bigger than you. Be a part of, have you a circle that you're not the smartest person in. Have you a circle that you feel like a dummy sometimes in. And I love those circles because I'm able to learn and I'm able to grasp new ideas and new concepts. And so that would be my idea. And listen, don't ever think God has forgotten about you. He knows where you are. He knows what he's doing. And if you wait on him, God will blow your mind. That's really what I have.
Yes, sir. And tell them about your church too. Tell them about Rose Hill, where it's located there in the area. Tell them about the church as well.
Well, we're right here on 48 Magnolia, 6132 Highway 48. You can't miss us if you take the exit off I-55 south. We're the Magnolia exit and just stay on 48 until you see this building. It's to actually our Family Life Center, our recreational center, and our actual sanctuary. You see those two. And so we're just a people that love, and we're excited about you coming and being a part of the Rose Hill experience. I promise you, if you come the way you are, you will not remain the way you've always been. And so come and see us. Come and see us.
Yes, sir. Well, that's a wrap for today. I'm so grateful for Uncle Gary spending his time with us. Like I said, he means so much to me, and he's just such a great person, a great spirit, and a great preacher as well. Great preacher. So I'm grateful that he spent this time with
Oh,
us. So,
Lord.
so yeah. So like,
We look
comment, and
forward to you
share.
coming to Rose Hill and coming to share with us, Doc. I've
Oh,
spoken about you, and so it's just a matter of time.
you already know I've already got my bags packed. I'm ready to come. I'm ready to come
All
and
right,
get
we're
some
going
of
to bring
that
you
good
down and love on
Mississippi
you a little
cooking.
while. All right. It's down here, Doc. It's down here. It's real.
I'm
God
already.
bless you. God bless everyone. Okay, yeah, I didn't hear you. No volume. No volume.